Communication is a critical component that must be conveyed to the police by the victim. I strongly encourage victims to maintain detailed records such as logs to record the stalker's behavior, save all text messages, emails, and social media so that they may share this with law enforcement. It's just as important, and it is the duty of law enforcement to ask the appropriate questions to identify these patterns and collect the vital information to establish course of conduct in an effort to effectively prosecute and protect the victims of such crimes. It is my recommendation that all forms of unwanted behavior directed to any victim should be reported to law enforcement. Certainly when the unwanted behavior rises to the level of imminent danger to life or safety, and that victim should immediately call 911. I want to thank you this morning, and I'd like to introduce to you now Cathy McClanahan, Executive Director of the Women's Center.
Thank you. So as Tyler and Scott talked about arrest, prosecution, and what stalking is, I'm here to talk a little bit about what the Women's Center can do if you are a stalking victim. We provide free and confidential services to stalking victims when it's a co-occurrence with domestic violence or sexual assault. As a result of stalking, victims have reported traumatic stress, hypervigilance, excessive fear, and anxiety. Many of them report they have become highly distrustful, suspicious, fearful, nervous, angry, paranoid, and depressed. In other words, stalking contributes to symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. One study found that 81% of victims were stalking occurred by a former intimate partner and had been physically assaulted by the partner also. 57% of intimate partner stalking victims report that stalking behaviors began before the relationship ended. Abuse takes all different forms. The stalker could be checking the victim's phone log, reading the victim's email, confirming the victim's whereabouts, timing how long it takes to get to the grocery store. These behaviors often seem normal to victims. They're not as alarming as physical abuse. Identifying these behaviors of stalking is critical. Research is clear that when physical abuse and stalking co-occur, the victim is at greater risk of violence, including homicide, and will need comprehensive safety plans. Stalking intersects with sexual assault also in several ways. The stalker may threaten to sexually assault a victim or carry out a sexual assault against the victim. 31% of women who were stalked by an intimate partner were also sexually assaulted by that partner. Our advocates can help victims of sexual assault identify stalking behaviors. They can emphasize how reporting stalking behaviors and they can help law enforcement officers and prosecutors investigate and successfully prosecute the crime. There are 4 golden rules that we tell stalking victims. Do not have contact with the stalker, tell others, increase personal protection, and collect evidence, and document. Our trained advocates can help develop a safety plan. They will listen and ask questions non-judgmentally, help identify the victim's specific needs and goals, discuss and analyze the risks, explore strategies and resources, and provide information and options. If a victim decides to report to the police, advocates can support their decision by helping them understand what to expect. Advocates have an important role in helping victims weigh the different benefits and drawbacks regarding protection orders, as well as guiding them through the court system and the filing process. Advocates can help victims of stalking navigate the process of crime victims' compensation if a victim wishes to file. The advocate can help the victim understand documents, deadlines, and reimbursable expenses in Illinois. A referral to counseling and other services will be provided as needed, and all of the Women's Center services are free and confidential. If you think that you might be or are a victim of stalking, please call the Women's Center Crisis Hotline at 1-800-334-2094 to discuss the safety plan and analyze your risk. Thank you.
Thank you.
thank Sheriff Harvel and Ms. McClanahan for being here today and for that information. And I just want to again emphasize that stalking is a pattern of behavior, and it is very important that law enforcement, prosecutors, victim advocates, and most importantly the community recognize that it is a pattern. It may seem like one isolated incident that is not that serious, a harassing phone call, a harassing Facebook message, a note left on your vehicle, the stalker showing up at your place of work. But when you put all of those things together, you see a pattern where the individual seeks to control the victim. And it is very important that the public understand that, and it is very important that victims take steps. And the first step is victims need to trust their instincts. If something is not right with the situation, they need to tell people. Don't let people downplay it or minimize it. Make sure that you speak up for yourself. Contact a victim advocate, contact law enforcement, speak to someone that you can trust. It is also critically important that you contact the police when there is a pattern of behavior that may not seem like that serious of an incident by itself, but when you look at those in a pattern, the police need to know what that pattern is. You have to communicate to the police officer, not just, I received a harassing phone call today. I've received harassing phone calls for the last month. I've received 100 Facebook messages. This person has shown up at my place of work or at my home or at my family's home. It's very important to communicate that to police. Sheriff Harvel has emphasized that, and I again want to emphasize it is critically important that victims relay the full context of the behavior to the police. And as the sheriff said, if you're in immediate danger, you feel you're in immediate danger, please call 911. As both Cathy and the sheriff emphasized, keep a log, keep a record of the activity so you can relay that to the police, so you can relay that to the prosecutor. Save your text messages, your phone records, your Facebook posts that are directed at you or about you. Save those so those can be provided to law enforcement as well. And most importantly, get help. Call the Women's Center, call the National Domestic Violence Hotline, or any number of other agencies, including the State's Attorney's Office. We, as a community, need to recognize this crime. Stalking, as I said, is so often unrecognized and underreported. We need your help when the public in supporting victims and holding offenders accountable. So I want to thank law enforcement, thank Sheriff Harvel and Ms. McClanahan for being here today, and we'd be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Can you give us an idea of what it's like, how many people you encounter in Southern Illinois, Union County? Anybody can answer this. What's the situation like in our area?
Well, our office, I can speak for the State's Attorney's Office in Union County, we prosecute a handful of stalking cases a year, but we try to work very proactively with law enforcement and with our victim advocates to handle these incidents the first time they occur rather than letting it escalate. So we handle countless cases of phone harassment, violation of order of protection, trespassing, and other types of harassment in these types of situations, and we try to address them early on, but we certainly do deal with a handful of cases that escalate each year. And that's why I think it's so important that we have timely reporting and timely prosecution of these cases. I don't know if the sheriff has anything to add on that.
I can just echo that. From my perspective, that's what we see, and more so the isolated incidents of the violations of the order protections, criminal damage to property, criminal trespass, phone harassment, those kinds of things is what we commonly see. And so we address those pretty quick when those occur, when they are reported to us. So I think it does probably prohibit the alternative of stalking.
Yeah, we're the same way, but with us, stalking is also related to the domestic violence case and the sexual assault case, so we see numerous occasions when that's going on. Also, one of the things I wanted to mention is cyber stalking and Facebook. That is a issue that we work with every survivor, every person that comes to our door. We talk about the risk involved in that and talk about how to keep themselves safe. So that's another issue that we want to make sure that people are aware of. And the advocates at our center can help you, identify those different risks.
Can you give people some tips just on social media? Say they have somebody that's messaged them a couple times.
I think one of the first things that we encourage certainly is to immediately report that and save those messages so that we as law enforcement can track that information down, because we have to verify that. But in other instances where it may pertain to I know sometimes this is not what victims want to hear, but consider changing your name and don't answer the phone, but don't respond to any of that kind of stuff. So that's some of the just a few tips that I would have for them.
And save screenshots.
Save screenshots.
Absolutely.
What about privacy settings on Facebook? Do you suggest locking it down like completely to where you can only add friends? Because I know there's a setting on there that you can have it.
I would personally would encourage that because I know that from past experiences dealing with victims, I mean, some of their information is open to anyone. I would say yes, definitely lock that down to where it's, you can control who you're communicating with. So yes, absolutely.
A lot of times people don't realize the scope and the nature of how many people are able to see their Facebook. And so just educating people on that issue and how to set those privacy settings is also necessary a lot of times.
Can you talk a little bit about how technology has changed stalking? Because it seems now someone can be stalked by somebody sitting at home, not necessarily phone.
Well, I think that's a good question, and a point on that. Stalking is often involved. We often see stalking in a romantic relationship. There may have been a romantic relationship in the past, but there also are cases where there has been no relationship or at least no romantic relationship, and stalking occurs. So we see that in both contexts, and Facebook is certainly relevant to that. People are able to find out a lot more about people depending on what they're sharing on Facebook and Instagram and other programs. So in the time I've been stage training, we've seen a huge change in terms of what's available online, and we work every day with law enforcement to obtain records from, it seems that every week there's a new social media platform that we're getting information from, and that is something that is a factor in many of these stalking cases.
Can you use that same technology to also persecute the?
Well, we definitely try to take advantage of whatever records we have in terms of prosecution, and that is another side of it. It does allow us to have more of a record when we're going into the courtroom to prosecute a case in terms of the volume, and we have dates and times and specific content. So that's again why it's timely that these issues are reported, because some of that information is only available from those social media providers for a limited period of time. Some information we can get months and even years later, but some of the specifics of the content of the messages we can only get for a short period of time. So that's another reason why it's very important to report stalking, report harassment as soon as possible.
Can you, sorry, go ahead.
Yes, sir.
I was just going to ask, what do you find when you prosecute these cases? Does a stalker have sort of like a mental case or an obsession, or what's the purpose? Why is he so caught up in to do that to begin with?
Well, in my experience, there's no one specific profile of these types of offenders. One thing that is in common is it is usually about controlling the other person. That's what I have seen in my work as stage training. I don't know if Ms. McClanahan wants to speak to that.
Exactly. It's another way to control their victim. They intimidate and control them by doing all of these behaviors as far as, watching where they're going and who they're talking to and all of these different things, and then they use that against them whenever they're in their presence or whenever they're trying to harm them or scare them. And so again, it's no one specific, no pattern specific to a perpetrator that we can pinpoint, but they're scare tactics and a way of controlling their victim.
And what percentage of this is non-domestic, or the parties don't really have a domestic relationship? Might actually even be adversarial.
In the cases that I have dealt with in my office, there generally is some sort of domestic relationship, but I can't speak to the wider Southern Illinois area, but I think the vast majority of cases we deal with are people that have been at some point involved in some type of relationship, and usually the relationship that's ended, but that nationally I think that you see it in both contexts.
And you might have mentioned this earlier, but what percent of, how much stalking goes unreported, in your opinion?
Well, I can't speak specifically to what's unreported, but I can tell you that many cases that we have dealt with, when we look at the full full course of conduct. It's something that could have been reported much earlier, and that is very common in my experience, that this is something that really, contact with the police should have been made at a much earlier point in the course of conduct. And I've also seen cases where there's a report made to police, but it's only about that specific incident of phone harassment or trespassing, and the information is not conveyed to the police about those other incidents. So again, law enforcement and the prosecutors and the victim advocate we don't know that this is really a stalking situation because we don't have that prior information.
What kind of charges can one receive from stalking, and what kind of sentence?
Stalking in Illinois is a class 3, generally class 3 or 4 felony. It can be aggravated stalking and be higher, but it certainly is an offense where the offender is subject to a prison term.
Once people get all this wonderful information, are you expecting reports to go up?
Well, we're always hoping that victims reach out, and that's why we're here today to educate the public and victims that there are people here to help, and we are ready, willing, and able to do so. And I appreciate everyone being here today just for that purpose, because we want to send that message that across the board, the police, victim advocates, and prosecutors are here to help in these situations. Any other questions? Thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate it, and have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.